cameras and news trucks in your front yard, and we'd go to the supermarket sometimes and there'd be a tabloid, with my picture, JonBenet's picture, plastered on the front. They would follow us around. Seeing that as a little kid, just kind of chaotic nightmare. So I was pretty skeptical of like any sort of media. Like it just made me a very private person.
So that's a little bit of an introduction for Burke Ramsey, kind of describing where he, as we last saw, where he is in life as of 2016 in terms of his motivations and things like that in the JonBenet Ramsey case. And just a little bit about Burke Ramsey before we dive into this analysis. Burke was born on January 27th of 1987, which makes him about 38 years old as of 2025. Was born in Atlanta, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. But spent his early years in Boulder, Colorado. Later moved with his family to Charlevoix, among many other places. Charlevoix, Michigan. Graduated from Charlevoix High School in 2005. Went on to attend Purdue University, where he earned a degree in computer science or computer and information technology in 2010. As a child, it seemed that Burke was energetic and active. However, following the tragic events surrounding his sister JonBenet's death, he became what it seems like as more reserved and private. In adulthood, he has maintained a low profile, working as a software engineer and residing in Michigan. And while Burke has largely stayed out of the public eye, he did participate in a 2016 interview, as we saw with Dr. Phil, where he discussed his experiences and addressed public speculation. Despite ongoing media attention, he has chosen to lead a private life, focusing on his career and personal well-being. And so this is going to be a little bit of a dive into Burke's life through pictures. So here we go. And to start, we are looking at Burke from 1998. And this is from the Leavitt High School or Leavitt School. And I think prior to this, he would have been in High Peaks Elementary. I don't see any pictures from that, but he would have been in High Peaks Elementary prior to that. And so this is kind of just like a little page of what his yearbook looked like. He was in 5th grade at this point. And if we zoom in a bit more on the same page that we just had, we can see right here, picture of Burke. Here's Burke Ramsey in the 5th grade, what he might look like. So, 5th grade, man, this is 1998, all smiles. Everything's good. Life is good. And then moving into 1999, what we've seen from his yearbook in 1999, he would have probably been moving into the 6th grade. And we see a picture of some marching band related stuff, which kind of gives us a little bit of the precursor to what we can expect from Burke next. So 6th grade band, we see Burke Ramsey. So a little bit active in band, just kind of getting an idea about some of his interests. So from what we've seen so far, he's smiling. He seems like he's generally happy. And he's kind of in this picture, and he's active in band. Let's go back before we move forward. So he's in band, and then we kind of get to just a little bit of his class, and then we move quickly on to what he looked like in 6th grade. So this would have been Burke in the 6th grade. Kind of what he looks like. Still happy, still smiling. Almost looks like he has braces, but just could be the graininess of the photo. And so at this point, he's still at the Leavitt School. John talks about this in his books. I think in The Other Side of Suffering, he does confirm this. And this, I think, was kind of mentioned in the Vanity Fair article, The Other Side of Suffering, by Anne Louise Bardock. Missing Innocence, not The Other Side of Suffering, Missing Innocence by Anne Louise Bardock. And she mentioned that Burke was going to the Levet School immediately after, John, this whole thing with JonBenet. And then John sort of confirmed that, I believe, in The Other Side of Suffering, if I can remember correctly. Either that or The Death of Innocence, one of the books. So here's Brooke. I don't know why I said that. Here's Burke in the 6th grade. And so from the 5th to the 6th, pretty consistent smile. I would say less of a smile here, maybe more mechanical. Maybe he's being weighed down by something. Okay. And then pushing into 2000, right? And so here we have a little bit about the cross country, which gives us an idea about what he's going to do. And essentially, we're kind of getting a better picture of how Burke spent his time at the school. And so if we kind of zoom in on that same page just a little bit more, we can kind of see the middle school cross country, and we see Burke up here in this top right corner. Obviously, you see his name down there, but we can kind of see a little bit more about Burke. So we can see that Burke was in the marching band, and now we know a little bit more that he was in the cross country. He was on the cross country team in middle school, so in 6th grade. So in band in 5th grade, in middle school, and then on the middle school cross country team in the 6th grade. So far, this is pretty indicative of a normal kid, especially somebody like Burke, who may have a lot of energy, may be interested in a lot of things. This goes along with, Patsy and John Ramsey's parenting style. They mentioned that they do like their children to kind of get out and try new things. I believe it was in one of their books and I think in some interviews that John talked about wanting their kids to experience stuff and putting JonBenet in all kinds of things. I think it was actually the Oprah interview that he mentioned more specifically, JonBenet was involved in these other things, but we don't have any video of that. And so it just seems like JonBenet was involved in pageants. And so it kind of goes to the philosophy. And I think Patsy kind of mentioned, I wanted my kids to be in a lot of stuff. And then JonBenet was, involved in taking violin. I think in the police interviews, Patsy mentioned this. JonBenet was involved in taking a violin, and she got disinterested and didn't want to do it anymore. So she went another direction. And so this is kind of consistent so far with the parenting style. They're kind of still holding up the opportunity for Burke and kind of being consistent in their parenting style, I guess I should say. Consistent in their parenting style, allowing Burke to do this. And so it's consistent. So it's not just that. And here we're in 2000 still. So, and we see some pictures of the bands. And so it's not that Burke, and we can see a picture of Burke here, part of the marching band. And so it looks like either he's associated with percussion of some sort, or maybe that's just the prop. But at any rate, he's in the band. And so this is kind of telling us that this is not Burke substituting cross country for band. This is Burke adding on, cross country along with band. And so as he's getting older, he's taking on more responsibility. Okay. So very interesting. And this is just a kind of an index of the yearbook. All the pages that you can find Burke Ramsey on in his 2000 yearbook, which I believe he changed schools at this point. Okay. And so here, kind of mentioning band a little bit more, but he's in 8th grade now. and we can kind of see him here. So there's a consistency, kind of grainy, but there's a consistency of Burke being in band over these 3 years, or at least these 3 grades, that kind of tell us a little bit. And he would have been, and this is in 2001, so he would have been 13 or 14, maybe 13, maybe 13 going on 14, something like that. And so band has been a consistent hobby that he likes. But then comes the interesting thing. What you're seeing here is drama in theater pictures. And if we move forward, you can see that Burke here is in middle school drama. Now, I will say this, maybe this is a substitution. And this is still in 2001. Maybe this is a substitution of cross country. I tried cross country, I didn't like it. Want to do something different. Now, you remember Patsy Ramsey was highly active in high school. So obviously it's natural, again, that her kids would be active in high school. Now, Burke has never struck me as one who wants to be involved in drama. I can understand band with following through with computer science, computer information technology. I can understand band. I can even understand cross country, but I don't understand drama. I don't understand drama because Burke is active. I would call him an active child. I would call him an upbeat, high energy child. But I wouldn't call him a theatrical child. JonBenet is theatrical. Burke is not theatrical. Both are active, right? Very active children, but active in different ways. So I'm a little confused here as to where this influence, or where this sort of, let's just say influence, where this influence of drama or a desire to get into drama came from. I am not trying to insinuate that John and Patsy forced Burke into drama, but it's possible that John and Patsy, and probably mostly Patsy, said, hey, have you considered other things to do? Are there other things that you're interested in? Maybe you'd be interested in drama, in theater. I think that could be a way to express yourself in other ways. Because Burke just does not strike me as somebody who would do drama. That would be more of a JonBenet thing. And I have to pause and ask myself just a little bit. Is this part of where JonBenet's journey would have been? I know John and Patsy would tell me different, and they would say, oh, you know, Burke just came home one day and said, hey, Mom, you know what? I think I want to be in drama. I always saw, when I was in high school, I always saw friends and stuff like that in drama. But that never interested me, right? And I say that to say that some things just don't interest you. I guess that's what I'm saying. Some things just don't interest you. Some things look fun, but it's just, that's not what I want to do, right? I love to play football. I want to go play football. So I just kind of stay there. So this is an interesting point to me. And so this is in his 2001 yearbook. And at this point, he's still at the Levet School. And we are trying to confirm if he is adding responsibility or if he is trading things out. And so from his, I believe his 6th grade or his 7th grade, because so this is, I think he's in 8th right here, maybe. In his 7th grade, or his 6th grade, 5th grade, he was in band. And then 6th grade, he was in band. And he added also in his 6th grade, he added cross country. And I think in 7th grade, he added band and cross country. So in 7th grade, he was in cross country and band. Okay, so in 01, in 8th grade, in 8th grade, he's in band, he's in drama, seventh grade, he's in band, okay. 8th grade, he's in band. He's in drama. And he is also in cross country. So that's 3 things. This is on par. This is consistent. And we see his name down here in the middle school cross country. As part of the middle school cross country squad. Continuing in 08, or I'm sorry, in 01, 2001, at this time, he's about 14, 13, 14, like I said. We see, looks like miscellaneous sports, wrestling and swimming. But more specifically, Burke is associated with swimming. So Burke is in swimming, band, drama, and cross country. It's a busy schedule. This is, I would say, the influence of Patsy. This is going to be the influence of Patsy. Some has just got me thinking. I was looking in the Levet yearbook for 5th and 6th grade, and Burke and Doug, I thought, were going to the same school. However, I don't see Doug in 98 or 99. I didn't see Doug in 98 or 99. Maybe I'll go back and try to look again, but it's weird because it was my understanding that Susan Stine, according to John and Patsy Ramsey, was dropping off Burke and Doug to the same school. However, I don't remember seeing Doug's name in any of these schools. And of course, that was I'm assuming it was in Colorado, where they were kind of, that 5-month period where they were camped out at the Stine's house in Colorado, where Burke was kind of finishing up at High Peaks. But what is also interesting to me is that if this is the Lovett School in Georgia, which I think it is, what school did Doug go to? How far were the Stines away from the Ramseys when they moved to Georgia? When did that relationship deteriorate? Was that relationship deterioration due to the fact that John had a bad rep when he tried to sign on with JLEO North America? And one of his friends, as he mentions in his book, one of the friends, I think the VP of sales, was kind of like, yo, John, man, you're bad for business. I can't let you come up in here. And I think Glenn Stine was also let go of or left due to that. And he went to, I think, Coludis Consulting or something like that, like a consulting firm or whatever. That was right up his alley in terms of finance mixed with education and stuff like that. So that was right up his alley. But I wonder, because they moved to Atlanta together, and is it the case that when we went to Atlanta together, when they went to Atlanta together, it's possible that maybe bad business, I agree, as Glenn might say to John, I agreed to come down here with you, but, and I agreed to have I thought I was going to have a job, but I get down here and I don't have a job. And now I got to figure out how to pay for this house. You know what I mean? I got to figure out how to pay for this house and support my family. I wonder where the deterioration comes from. And then what makes me ask that, if there was a deterioration, what makes me ask that is that in 2012, there is no mention of the Stines in John Ramsey's book. If you have somebody that was extremely supportive of you, the most consistent person that was supporting you through the death of your child over the most crucial months in that time period, and subsequently years after, I would wonder where they went. Where is that relationship now? Because it doesn't seem like y'all interact or talk to each other much. Or who was the glue in that relationship? Did John and Glenn really have a true friendship, or was the true relationship between Patsy and Susan? And then John and Glenn were sort of the beneficiaries of that relationship between Susan and Patsy, in which Patsy was the real facilitator of friendships and social events and sort of the social life that the Ramseys had. Such as is to say that if it had not been for Patsy, then the Ramseys really wouldn't have had a positive social life. It could have been the case that because of Patsy, John was cooler than he seemed to be. And so I say all that to say that this here seems like Patsy's influence. All of these things, because this is exactly, John only did like 1 or 2 things in high school. Doing 4 things? Like 4 things in 1 year? This is Patsy. Patsy pushed herself like this, in this exact way, through high school and into college. That comes from Patsy's bloodline. That's a Nidra thing, to push yourself that way. So this is kind of making me wonder, and this isn't '01 that he's doing this. Okay, so kind of getting a look at the 8th grade yearbook pictures, and then being more specific to pick out Burke. Still bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, still happy, Life is great. Of course, as you can see, Burke Ramsey. Things are great. Perfect. Move on to 2002. A little bit less in terms of dimensions. And he's kind of in his freshman year. 9th grade. I think at this point, they're in Michigan, maybe. And I could be wrong on that because he could have been somewhere else for 2 years and then moved to Michigan to graduate. And so this is Burke in the 9th grade. And this makes me think that he's still in Georgia because these two people are the same. He's in 9th grade. This is 2002. He's probably like 14, 15 years old at this point. And so these two people are the same as the 8th grade. And so he's probably still at the Levet school. So he's still in Georgia, I believe. It's like he's still in Georgia. Okay. Still in 02. Got some looks at some swimming stuff. And what we can see here is Burke is still on the swimming team. Now it looks a little bit bigger. Looks a little bit more toned. Like he's trying to get in the weight room. Just more defined here is what it looks like. And he is on the swim team. And that's it. That is it for 02. So in 01, swimming, drama, band, and cross country. To go to 02 and we just have swimming. Everything else dropped off. Same school, but everything else dropped off. Moving into 03, still looks like we don't have a lot of mention of Burke. Okay. See the high school yearbook. And then we see Burke, you know, in 10th grade. At this point, he's about 14, 15, no, I'm sorry. He's about 15, 16 years old, you know, getting ready to start driving, you know, getting his permit. And if he's doing it through the school, then he's probably in some driving courses and stuff like that. Driver's ed, you know how it is. I didn't take driver's ed in school. I took it at home, but, you know, a lot of my friends took it in school. So he's possibly in driver's ed, maybe been taught it at home. And so this lets me know, I think these two people here that are familiar let me know that he's still at the Levet school for 10th grade. Okay. And then we can kind of see from here, looks like swimming. And so what we can see from here is that Burke is not in this picture. This is the varsity swim and dive team. And Burke is on the team, but as we can see, he's not pictured. So you can kind of see here, just to kind of be thorough, not pictured, Burke Ramsey, along with a list of other people. So he's kind of not pictured in this. 04 comes in, and this is when John started running for, start campaigning, supportramsey.com. And Burke is kind of helping out a little bit on his dad's campaign. At this point, he's 16, 17, something like that, just depending on when it is. So, that's admirable. Getting ready to support his dad. So far, he looks like a normal kid, not frantic. Doesn't look down, doesn't look weighed down by anything. Just kind of looks like he's going on about life. Doesn't look like he has the energy of a care in the world. He's just living his life. Whatever he's doing, you can tell he's concentrating on that. He's not it's like if somebody's fixing a car, you can tell that, and there are certain looks and expressions on their face that tell you that they're only concerned about fixing a car. I'm not concerned about anything else. I'm just concerned about what's in front of me. Doesn't look like he's concerned about the cares of life, trouble on the next hill above. And remember, this is an individual who has always been in the spotlight for a long time. I mean, 90, 96, what is this? 04. So let's say 97. About maybe 8 years, something like that. Maybe like 8 years that he's been in the spotlight almost for his sister's death. You know what I mean? And he doesn't look stressed about the media at all. He doesn't look stressed about anything around him. In none of these pictures, and this is my opinion, this has nothing to do with anything, but this is just my opinion. In none of these pictures, in none of these pictures, does Burke look stressed. None of them. About anything. Burke seems like whatever is coming to him in life, he is handling it like a champ. Unbothered, unfazed. This is my opinion. It doesn't make it true. I'm just talking. Unbothered, unfazed, and unworried. That's what I'm saying. Here we go again. Here we go again. In 2004. This is another picture where Burke was being, and you can see Ramsey here. Sorry, no, you can't. I lied. If I scroll in on his back, you can see Ramsey here. And this is Burke, same shoes, having himself a grand old time. Now he's a kid. Some of you might say, oh, he's a kid. What do you expect him to do? Nothing. I expect him to be a kid. I'm not saying he can't be a kid. I'm just saying Burke is having the time of his life. No problems, no cares in the world. Seems to be doing okay. Gentleman is doing okay. Skateboarding, setting up for his dad's campaign. We're good. 04 again. Whoever this gentleman is, campaigning for the Ramseys and I think I downloaded this picture just because I wanted to be clear. Because some people could look at this and be like, oh, that could be anybody with a skateboard. Correct. But here we see Burke specifically with a skateboard as part of the Ramsey campaign. Not ducking cameras. Not a duck in the world. No bobbing and weaving the camera. I'm here and I'm doing it for my dad. And so, what does that say? Ryan. Ryan Gallant. Who is that? Ryan Gallant is a American professional skateboarder with a goofy-footed stance. Born in 82. Okay. So something about this Ryan Gallant guy made Burke want to purchase his skateboard. And maybe it was the pattern, some sort, I don't know. Because, and I say that because some people might be like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Well, sometimes the things that you buy reveal a lot about you, or the things that you're interested in. Because, I mean, you have, if it's me, when I was growing up, really the biggest person to me was Tony Hawk. Tony Hawk had a game out. When I would go to school, all you would hear about was Tony Hawk. Rob Deerdeck, he had a show. Now I'm not a skateboarder person. I don't know people just like that, but just in terms of names that I knew. And so obviously, if you're more of a skateboarder person, you probably would have been like, hey, oh no, Ryan Gallant was, the best, so on and so forth, blah, blah. But essentially, and you can like anybody that you want to like, but essentially going for somebody that would be more low key in my mind, and the desire to look past the big name, the biggest name, and look into maybe somebody that's getting less attention, like Gallant, to say, hey, Gallant is equally as good. More people should be paying attention to Gallant. And in a way, it kind of parallels the relationship with JonBenet and Burke. I'm not saying that this is a real parallel. I'm not saying that this is the reason why Burke bought this skateboard, but sometimes in your unconscious and even your subconscious mind, you make decisions based on certain things that are your sort of moral foundation that just come up just because. This comes up because I feel like I like this. If you go up and look at a pattern and you're like, that's a pretty cool pattern, but you might, sort of subconsciously say, I want it in red though. And you may not even know that you're thinking that, but you say, man, this looks really cool. I like the pattern. And you walk away. And then somebody says, hey, did you find anything at the mall that you liked? And you might respond, no, I didn't really find anything. I saw some things that I kind of like, but I didn't pull the trigger on them. I didn't really get them. Why not? Well, maybe because they didn't have it in the color that you wanted. Why is that important? Because I would buy this in red because there's something about red that I like that needs to be consistent. And that lack of the clothing being red prevented you from making a purchase, because there is something about your values that tell you that if it ain't red, I'm not buying it. And so that's the point that I'm trying to make here with Burke. If it ain't an underdog, somebody that's getting less attention, I ain't buying it. I don't want to bring attention to the big people. The big people already have enough attention. I want to bring attention to the little people. Maybe people who are just as talented, I think, who are just as good and who are just as deserving of attention. Maybe Burke thinks that Ryan Gallant deserves a video game like Tony Hawk. Maybe Ryan Gallant deserves as much credit and fame on ESPN as Tony Hawk. Why is Tony getting all these deals and these opportunities kids loving him because I played Tony Hawk's video game. It was dope. I liked it. You know, Dave Mirra's BMX game is like on Xbox is like one of my top games that I love that game, you know. But anyways, that could mean something. And as you see, what is this? What is this? I like seeing this because I was like, some things never change, do they? Some things never change. Some things stay consistent. I liked Coke when I was a kid and I still love it today. Nothing wrong with that. You like what you like and that's your preference. I'm just pointing some stuff out here. And this is in 04. Again, this is in 2004. So at this point in time, he probably would have been 16, somewhere between 16 and 17, something like that. I'm estimating. Okay. And so we're picking up, continuing, seeing a little bit of yearbook stuff. Okay. And in here, 04 yearbook picture, we see Burke Ramsey. Now, this tells me that he might be in Charlevoix at this point. He may be in Charlevoix because I think that he finished his last 2 years in high school in Charlevoix. Number one. Number two, I don't see the same names around him that I saw in the Levet school yearbooks. And we noticed that Burke ain't smiling no more. He ain't smiling no more. I can't tell you why. I'm just noting that. Not smiling anymore. Okay. Could be because he moved and he's getting used to Charlotte. No, but he's familiar with Charlevoix. He knows Charlevoix. He used to go to Charlevoix every summer. So he's more than familiar with Charlevoix. Maybe he doesn't have as many friends in Charlevoix. Maybe he doesn't have any more friends at all in Charlevoix. Maybe when he got back, the weight of the JonBenet scandal ran away all of his friends. But here we see Burke with the video camera in his hand, still on the Ramsey campaign, probably going around and taking like little shots and stuff like that from his dad for his dad's campaign. And I'm wondering, because if this is Burke, I'm thinking this is his left hand. I could be wrong, just depending on how the camera is mirrored. Somebody's taking a picture of him. He seems fine. He doesn't seem like he's just over the moon, but he seems like he's fine. It seems like a nice, warm day. And it looks that he has he has a watch on his left hand, camera on his right. I'm just wondering if that can tell me the orientation, if he's right-handed or left-handed. But anyways, this is an 04, still on his dad's campaign, whatnot. Make it bigger if you just happen to want more details. If you're just that kind of person who just wants to know more. Definitely the same color hair as Patsy. Just looking like a normal kid, man. And then we move into 05. And this is what was written. And so this is Burke's senior picture. Burke Hamilton Ramsey. And this is, I believe, what Burke decided to write or put for himself. And he's quoting Jeff Earhart. And Jeff Earhart says, maybe we're all just part of God's sim universe video game. Let's just hope that he's not on a Windows machine or we're all in trouble. That is a little computer science humor for you. But the fact of the matter is that if you go and look up Jeff Earhart, can't find him. You will probably run into like one quote from some guy named R. Slade, who is also, kind of in the computer world. And, you can even go to his Twitter. The guy who also posted it, I think the guy posted it in 2019. Go to his Twitter and try to find where he posted it. He posted it in some forum that's part of like an email chain or something like that he was doing. And, you'd be hard pressed to find this Jeff Earhart guy. At least I was. Maybe you know more about it than I do. And maybe you know who he is right offhand. But I couldn't find this guy. But it kind of goes to say that if I can only find 2 instances of this individual on Google, then this individual in some way, shape, or form, unless I'm looking for the wrong thing, is very nuanced. Of course, we can say engineering, yes, computer engineering, computer science, whatever. But this individual is apparently very nuanced within this community, which kind of makes sense when we're talking about Burke. Kind of goes to the same point that I was making with the Ryan Gallant skateboard, to where you have somebody that's not as known, right? Some may have mentioned Tony Robbins, some may have mentioned Eric Thomas or any other famous speaker, notable speaker, motivational speaker. But Burke chooses, and we would have been able to find them, but Burke chooses Jeff Earhart, somebody that's not super well known, according to what I've looked for, somebody that's not super well known. That seems to me to indicate in some sort of fashion that you might be dealing with an individual who is, when we talk about attraction, who is attracted to underdog things, or attracted to things that are sort of hidden gems. And oftentimes when you are attracted to certain things that like hidden gems, that means that you are a hidden gem in and of your own right, or you feel like a hidden gem. You feel like not a lot of people pay attention to you. They should, but they don't, or not enough. That kind of obviously would be the case with Burke and JonBenet. I was born first. I should be paid attention to. You shouldn't just forget about me. But John is gone, and you have the perfect storm to where John is gone. He's working, he's traveling. And it's not like Patsy is trying to ignore anyone. It's just that JonBenet demands a lot of attention for her pageantry. Some cases, Burke may not want to go, so he might be left with a friend, dropped off at a friend's house, or what have you. And I was going to say a point about that. What's also weird about that to me is that, how close were Burke and Doug Stine in that, right? Because I don't see y'all going to the same schools outside of High Peaks, maybe, And I haven't even seen the pictures for High Peaks. So I would have to assume that you guys were in the same yearbook. But I don't see you in anything in the 5th, the 6th. You know what I mean? I don't see you in the 5th, the 6th. You guys are not going to the same school. And that's what's a little weird to me. How close were you guys really for that little space and time that you guys were together? That's when we have a record of you guys becoming super close, working on projects and stuff like that, as if you guys were that close before. I'm thinking maybe they knew of each other because of their parents, maybe seeing, I see you here and there, you know, and obviously we kind of jump around and play as the neighborhood kids, but I'm wondering if they got closer because of this, and closeness was sort of imposed, because I don't see any discernible relationship between these two prior to that. But anyways, kind of like Burke is kind of playing like I'm still valuable. I'm still worth it. And you guys should pay attention to me. And so if I go to this pageant with you guys to watch JonBenet, or I go to a friend's house, who that friend would be, I don't know. Because like I said, I don't know if Burke was even cool with Doug like that, or some other friend. Maybe he goes down to the Colby kid's house and whatnot. So I don't know. But Burke is like, while you guys are paying attention, and again, it's not malicious that they're leaving you here and leaving you there, or you're having to be dragged to JonBenet's pageants. It's just that JonBenet is, you know, kind of the only one who really has something going on, or maybe not that. It's just that she's probably got one of the most important things going on right now, or maybe not that. She has one of the most demanding things going on right now. And that's the only problem. And I think as a child, you may misinterpret that, and it's very easy to misinterpret that. And because kids do that all the time. Kids misinterpret that all the time. Oh, you're spending so much time with them. You don't like me anymore. And kids deal with that differently. That frustrates kids in different ways. And so who's to say that it didn't frustrate Burke in a very, because Burke he's very active. His facial features are active, right? Let me pull this down so you can see. His facial features are very active. And he was also in the diving Spanish club when it comes to, just those two when it comes to his senior year. But very active as a child in terms of his high energy as a child. And so like, I kind of want to be paid. I kind of want people to pay attention to me too. But if you tell me, come sit here and sit down, and over time, that might get annoying. And Burke might express his frustration as like a JonBenet coming and sitting in his room. He's like, oh my God, JonBenet, get out, you know? And so it's something like that. And so he's just, oh my God, you always come in here. And JonBenet is just like really unbothered, to where she's like, oh, I'm just, and JonBenet doesn't strike me as the kind of person who like you can fend off easily. If he gets up and walks downstairs, JonBenet just might, and she might not argue back with him. She just might get up and follow him downstairs. And he's like, why are you following me? And she's like, she doesn't say anything. She's just standing there with her bear. Why are you following me, JonBenet? I'm just coming downstairs to do whatever. Why are you following me? And she's just kind of standing there. And so and she doesn't know how to express, because I love you and you're my big brother and I love everything that you're doing. She doesn't know how to express that. All she knows is she just wants to, I just want to know what you're doing. So to be honest with you, JonBenet might be the type to walk up behind you and very quietly walk up behind you, sneak up behind you, not trying to, but sneak up behind you and be like, what are you doing? And you thought you were in the room by yourself. And you're like, oh my God, you scared me. That might be JonBenet. You know, some people take that differently, right? If you walk up behind somebody, maybe I'm down in the basement or something like that or whatever. When I got up, nobody was up. But all of a sudden I'm down in the basement and I don't hear no footsteps. And all of a sudden I hear, what are you doing? You know, I might jump a little bit. You behind me, somebody, what do you want, JonBenet? That might cause a little bit of agitation, right? Because I'm in the middle of something and you're about to stop me from doing something that I want to do. You're going to start talking loud. You're going to start making noise. And I just want you to be quiet. That might lead to some other things, but you know, we don't know. At this point, we're just kind of speculating how Burke might feel, sort of being pushed out of the spotlight. And so again, Burke is, you know, quoting somebody that's really difficult to find. He's quoting somebody that's like, yo, we can't find this guy. And this is his senior picture. Now he's kind of smiling, but not really. Could have something to do. There's definitely not as big of a smile as when he was in Atlanta. Apparently, because he was born in Atlanta. So apparently, and he moved by. He didn't move till I don't think they moved till to Colorado till 91. Yeah, I think it was 91. So at that time and I think it was like November or something like that of 91. So he was probably about four, something like that, 4 or 5 maybe in 91. Some change, maybe something like that. She's like 4 or 5, maybe something like that in 91. And so therefore, he may have had a lot of good memories in Atlanta that he can remember. Plus, if Nidra and Don and aunts are in Atlanta, you know, then it's a happy family in Atlanta. I'm closer to my aunts. I know life before JonBenet when I was being doted on by my aunts, right? So that might play into kind of how he feels as a younger child without JonBenet, and then moving to Colorado. JonBenet was born in 90. I think JonBenet was born in 90. Yeah. And so he got 3 years without JonBenet, something like that. Got about 3 years without JonBenet. 3 years of being doted on without JonBenet. But JonBenet comes at a time in which John has a daughter, but you know, he kind of needs a replacement daughter. And you know, the first thing that John and Patsy are going to think about is that JonBenet is a replacement daughter. I actually think that's somewhere in their in one of their works, in one of their books, that JonBenet is kind of, you don't want to say it that way, but JonBenet is like this replacement daughter for Beth, that Patsy can give to John and say, hey, here's a replacement. I know you lost a daughter, and nothing can ever replace her, but here's JonBenet that can lift your spirits up because you got that daughter back, and she can kind of live in Beth's memory. And so JonBenet by personality becomes that star, which kind of overshadows Burke a little bit. And as we saw before, Burke seemed, from his statements, she wasn't here, so I didn't draw her. You know, I'm just moving on with my life. And kind of seeing him smile in, you know, the pictures subsequent to JonBenet's death. Meanwhile, we hear about other people's children who are struggling with the death of JonBenet. And Burke is literally, and I mean legitimately, out there living his life. He meant that when he said that. I'm living my life. She ain't here, so I didn't draw her. And it makes sense. But then somewhere along the line, and he's back in his element when he gets to Atlanta. He's back in his element. He's smiling. Maybe that group of friends he's had a chance to establish, a group of friends in which don't seem to include Doug Stine on any real overt scale or in any real overt way. It's not really in the forefront. And so when he gets to Charlevoix, kind of has these dead-faced pictures. He's no longer in all these clubs. He's no longer like Superman, just in like one or two things. Still loves swimming and diving, maybe Spanish club to, keep it interesting. But other than that, it's just, I really don't like anything else. And that's it. So it's quite interesting. Patsy and John, they write, for seniors, they kind of give a little bit of a dedication page to him. This is a picture of Burke when he was younger. Kind of put him in that picture. And then not necessarily sure where Burke is in this picture. Right here, it looks like. Yeah, it looks like he's right here. So kind of faint, but they put that picture in there for whatever reason that's important. And then they have a picture of Burke, with a plane, with a toy plane. So kind of taken up after his dad and that's what I'm saying, like taken up after his dad and his love for planes and stuff like that. And we'll see another picture of him by a plane here soon, but kind of taken up after his dad for his love of planes. So he has like a kind of like a model plane right here that I think he can actually fly. And that's what I'm saying. I think Burke is more aligned with what his dad likes to do rather than, that's why drama threw me off so much. Cause I was like, why would Burke, he wouldn't be interested. This is more along the lines of what Burke would be interested in. John went into engineering and so Burke went into computer science. Yes, that makes sense. More interest along the lines of his dad. Burke Ramsey, we are very proud of you. Love, mom and dad. Whatever picture this is or has to do with. Oh, is this the love at school? Okay. And then, just a picture with a friend. Sort of like a goofy picture here. Burke is over here. Just hanging out with friends. I know who these guys are. This is going to be Fleet White the Third, I believe. I think that's Fleet White the Third, and I think that is, I want to say Doug Stine. I want to say it, but it's hard to pinpoint Doug Stine. Family picture. Don, Nidra, John Andrew, Melinda, JonBenet, Burke, Patsy, John, I want to say I want to say, because it's so grainy, I don't know who to call Polly, and I don't know who to call Pam. I don't know. One of them's Polly, one of them's Pam. I kind of feel like Polly, JonBenet is so little. And I feel like Polly went off and had kids first, but I could be wrong. Because this is She looks like she's like 3 or 4. So this had to be like 93 or 94. And this would mean that this little guy was born in 93, maybe like 93. If this is 90, if she's like 4, if this is like 94, this little guy looks like he's 6 months to a year. And I feel like that would be more aligned with Polly, but I could be wrong. So, I mean, could be wrong. But at any rate, and then we have Burke out here with a little wiener dog, and probably has nothing to do with Burke, but you have a little sailboat out here. Apparently, if this is anything to do with Burke, apparently this is Burke is taking the not taking a page out of his dad's book, or maybe he's furthered his education in sailing, because you remember when Fleet and John went on a boat, John said he didn't know anything about boats to that magnitude. So Fleet really had to kind of man the boat and kind of steer it and stuff like that and everything. And then finally, oh, we know Burke skateboards because here's a skateboard picture to confirm that. So thanks for that. Yeah, I think this is Charlotte. But anyways, Burke and his date. Huh. She looks familiar. I'm not gonna lie, she looks a little familiar. Okay. Senior photos. I think this has anything to do with Burke. I don't think. Oh. For some reason he's mentioned in this. Preps, I guess. So he's right here. So you see Burke, and this is an 05. So this looks like senior year. And we talked about Burke's love for planes. So this is a plane back here. It's like a personal plane. I estimate that this is somewhere between college and high school, or high school and college. So he went to, I think he was done with his first semester or first 2 semesters in college by the time, 1 or 2 semesters by the time Patsy died. So we do know for sure, though, that if this is estimated between high school and college, that Patsy had cancer at this time. And yeah. So another photo, let me make sure. Yeah, so another photo in 05. Patsy got cancer again in 04. So Burke is in, I think probably headed to college, in his dorm room. So it looks like they've caught a picture of him with some clothes. Not really a care in the world. You couldn't tell that he's lost a sister, and his mom is currently going through stage 4 cancer, and the media is hot on his trail. You would not be able to tell that. Okay, in 06 though, we can see here Patsy's funeral here, And I believe this is Burke right here. Kind of taking Patsy out. And again here, getting in the car. Now, one thing to note on this one is that he does kind of have that slight smirk. And this is the time in which, John was mentioning that they were getting ready to go through Atlanta. And John was like, well, you know, everybody kind of moved out of the way for us. We didn't know how we were going to get from point A to point B. The gravesite was like 30 minutes away. We didn't know how we were going to get from point A to point B. And everybody was so respectful, and everybody just cleared the way, and everybody just respected us. This is kind of that time period. So we see here Burke. This is at Patsy's funeral. If nothing else, Burke is consistent. That looks like a smirk. I'm not gonna lie. Now, people have said Burke needs to be checked out to see if he has some sort, any kind of disorder. I don't think they would have done that in 96. I don't think Patsy would have liked to accept something like that in 96. But we talk about a young man who cried when they told us that he cried when he realized the outcome of his sister. This man, he was outside the room when his mom died. Just standing right outside the room, and John, was sitting there in Patsy's final moments, according to John, in the other side of suffering. This man was sitting outside the room. We are here in 06. Let me just double check. We're here in 06. Burke is in college. Burke is probably about 18, 19 years old. And Patsy died. So if Burke is January and Patsy died in June, then Burke is definitely 19 by now. Burke is 19. Burke is 19 and he's hugging his dad. He's carried his mom's casket out to the hearse. We are at the funeral, and this is the last time you will ever see your mom. John is hugging him. I don't know what the context of that was. To say, son, we're both hurting. It's just us two now, because it really is just them two. It's just them left. John, possibly knowing and being aware that there are cameras around, turns to Burke and says, let's embrace. I love you, son. Boom, boom, boom. But Burke, not really being that emotionally attached, is doing this. I would think, this is just my speculation, I would think that somebody who is emotionally detached would be doing this, because they wouldn't understand really the weight of the situation. They would understand it, but they wouldn't understand it. It's like it's here and it's gone. So I struggle when they tell me that Burke cried about stuff, and I struggle because of stuff like this, because it's like, do you truly understand the weight of what I'm telling you? John is like, oh yeah, he cried. When I told him that JonBenet went to heaven, he said, I just broke down crying. Really? Because at your sister's funeral, like, you had two times to prove yourself. You did. If you really felt that way, I don't know if it's funerals or what. When you really felt that way, if you really did, You had 2 times to prove yourself. And I'm starting to question whether or not you really cried when you heard that JonBenet had gone to heaven. Because as we saw at the funeral of JonBenet, Burke wasn't even close. Burke was like, oh yeah, I saw her and her face was droopy. Where'd you see that? Because her casket was closed at the actual service. Did you see her at the wake? I need clarity on that. Because you said you saw her. Man, the casket was closed. That's neither here nor there. The fact that you were standing behind Patsy and John at the funeral, you weren't even up there. I ain't see no crying in. Then when your mom dies, I just see the smirk. And I'm not saying that he's laughing or whatever. Let's go with Dr. Phil. It's a nervous twitch. However, I'm confused because I don't see any tears. I just see the smile. And the smile to me would kind of be indicative of somebody who is not used to expressing emotions on that level. You know how people get awkward when they get in emotional situations? That's what this seems like. I'm not really used to showing emotions like that. And so when my dad hugs me, I'm just like, hey, yeah. So it's not to say that he's laughing or thinks it's a joke. It's to say that this dude is really not used to love like that. He's not really used to affection like that. And it could be that John wasn't showing affection when he was a kid as a man. And so Burke wasn't receiving affection as a kid, as a man from his dad. So when his dad hugs him at 19, showing love, it's kind of foreign. I mean, how many other pictures do you see of John hugging Burke? I don't see him. And it's also the fact that maybe John just hasn't, shared any of them with us. That's what I'm saying. But we don't see that. Even in an attempt to disprove us, John ain't releasing it. But Burke has that nervous smile here, which might indicate that there's a social detachment or a guy who doesn't really receive a lot of affection, which could play a part in having a problem because JonBenet is receiving all the affection. I'm just talking. I'm just saying this is in '06, at Purdue. He's in college at this point. So this is in '06. And then the graduate picture, it's a little bit grainy, but we have the graduate picture. This is the last remaining Ramsey from the Patsy era. I would expect him to be cherished far and above. I would expect them to, because as they said, we just poured into Burke. I just don't see this, and this is in 2010. I guess I would have expected his aunts. Now I think Nidra's dead at this point. So, and both of his grandparents on his dad's side they're dead. And maternally, his grandmother has passed away. Don Paul is still there. He's still alive. I think he died in 2019. Could be wrong, but I think he died in 2019. But Pam and Polly, I guess they can't make it to Tennessee. I think Purdue is in Tennessee. Where's Purdue? University. Indiana. Guess they can't make it up to Indiana. I mean, this is the last child from Patsy's line. This is the male that's going to carry on your sister's line. Now, you don't have to come. I'm just saying, you don't have to go. I'm just, I would expect there to be more pictures of them together in support of Burke moving forward. I don't see it. 2016, obviously, we have the picture of Dr. Phil and John. Look, y'all, look. Do you know what this conversation is for? Y'all. You know what this conversation is for? This conversation is about JonBenet. Burke has apparently identified a camera, and he has that same smirk. That's not even the big deal. The big deal is that he's not paying attention to the conversation between two grown men. At this point, this is 2016. I don't know when exactly they did the interview. But in 2016, I think they said Burke was 29 at the time. You're a grown man. You got a little hair on your chest at this point. You're a grown man, buddy. You can pay attention in a conversation. You are what we're here for. We've heard from John. We're actually here to talk to you. Burke is not engaged in this conversation. He's smirking again by the nervous twitch that Dr. Phil tells us it is. He's nervously twitching again and not paying attention to a conversation about his deceased sister. Why not? You're so busy trying to run away from the paparazzi. Can't stumbling over your shoestrings to get away from them. But every time I see you in a picture that the paparazzi snapped, you smiling. You smiling, or you don't have a problem and you're relaxed. Where is this stress? I don't see any stress on your brow to indicate to me that your shoes were coming off trying to get away from paparazzi. The media scares me. You're looking right at the camera smiling. I'm confused because you made it seem like, okay, can we get somewhere private? You guys are standing in public being photographed with Dr. Phil. When were y'all running away from the paparazzi? So fast and so hard, scheming and devising a plan. You know what it is? I don't want to be seen until I want you to see me. Maybe that's what it is. That's what it is. But I don't see any stress. I don't see any annoyance. This is in 2021, I think. And I was saying that she looks familiar. And this is why I was saying that. Because Burke ain't gonna let nobody around him like that. I'm not gonna be around a lot of people. Her eyes favor to me from what I can see. Now it's a little grainy. It's a little grainy. It's the biggest I can make it. But I think this is 2021. In 2021, he'd be about 34. Now he's stressed because he's got gray in his beard. But he'd be about 34, or at least that's my take. But a little bit of stress there. Maybe signs of early graying or some sort of traumatic event that, imposed that level of stress in his life. And so he's about 34 years old at this point. And it could be that she's been with him. So in 06, 05, this was 05, 2021 to 05. 16 years. So she's kind of, if this is her, then she's kind of ride or die. And I'm looking at the part right here, and the part seems a little bit more to this side, but I mean, she looks like she has an off-center hair part right here, but not as drastic as this. But they do kind of favor in the eyes to me. And they do somewhat favor in the bottom lip in terms of the smile. And they do kind of favor a little in the chin, just the way like the smile makes the chin protrude a little bit. This could be the high school sweetheart. Not gonna lie. I don't know. But he seems happy. And this is the last one. This is Burke, doing some stuff on the internet. I'll just say that, some stuff that he's been on the internet for and whatnot. So, but yeah, from what I can tell, as we've kind of seen, Burke has gone from like very high energy, and as he mentioned at the start of this, very high energy to sort of like more reserved, less, outgoing. So I think his natural state was very excited, and to go with that natural state of excitement, a little bit of social awkwardness in a way, like a little bit of social, if nothing else, a little bit of social awkwardness is kind of what it seems like. And could that have played a part in maybe some sort of strained relationship, and maybe being undiagnosed in some way? Could that have played a part in some sort of strained relationship between he and JonBenet, if one at all? Interested to know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you think. Appreciate all your support. Like, share, subscribe. And you've been doing that, so I can't really hound you. But I appreciate you, all my members. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. For those of you contributing monetarily, thank you so much. I appreciate everyone for commenting and being here and staying locked in and whatnot. So, like I said, thank you so much. Hope you're having a great day. If not, hope your day gets better. Take care of yourself. See you on the next run.